Okay, so we are live. Welcome to my audience, for those of you watching live and for those of you watching on the replay. So as always, I have a guest, so Nicci Take today. Nicci, my opening monologue is always the same. I've been told maybe not to do this, but for me, I don't introduce my guests because I don't think I would do the best job. So I just put it over to you. Just explain something about yourself, any background, any highlights, any lowlights, anything that you think is useful for the conversation today, for the audience to know about you, and then we jump into the conversation from there.
Okay, so I used to be a salesperson, but I'm okay now. And basically, I have spent the last 30 years as a sales coach. And so I help mostly big businesses in the pitch cycle. So if you're pitching, or if you're going to spend 100 million on something, you don't talk to one potential supplier, you talk to 3, 4, or 5. What that means is if you're one of the potential suppliers, you have a 1 in 4 or 5 chance of winning the deal. And so most people, when they're pitching for work, if they're winning 1 in 3, are doing really well. And for the last 30 years, I coach people and they win 3 out of 4. And that's what I do, really. And we've been doing it for long enough that we now don't need to charge an engagement fee. So it doesn't cost anything to deal with us. You just pay us out the winnings. And so it's a no win, no fee.
That's amazing.
That's what we do. And I have a team of people around the world. We can drop on any deal anywhere in the world at short notice if necessary, and double or treble your chances of winning the deal, and you pay us out the proceeds.
I think there's so much in that I want to dig into, but I just want to start off with this. So this idea about sales, and I think so we actually met through LinkedIn, and I think sales has always been one of those things that I've avoided because I'm nervous about it. I think there's a rejection behind it. There's a whole load of things. But in preparation for this conversation, so I've invited a lot of people, and most of them I was thinking, oh, who should I invite? Should I invite like salespeople? And I was like, no, probably like founders, people like in these companies, because they might think the same way as me. Maybe founders aren't the salespeople, but they need to understand much more about how you do business, because we obviously had this chat, I don't know, a week or 2 weeks ago now, and you blew my mind just in the way that you explain things, the way that you see things. And I always thought sales was like a volume business, but I mean, even in our conversations, just chatting on LinkedIn, you explained it wasn't about that, and then you started talking about thinking much deeper about things, and it wasn't just just speak to 100 people, and it was more about psychology and how people think and how they're showing up. And I thought that's so powerful. People, I mean, again, I'm not in the sales world, but I've never come across anyone that thinks the same way as you do. It seems like a completely different angle. And so is my understanding incorrect, or how do you see when you go into these companies? Do they think it's a volume business, and how do you have to correct that? Where do you start? What's your process if you want to break it down?
So I think we should start by saying sales is a broad profession. Like you've got your second-hand car dealer who is trying to make a deal, close a deal, and then you've got somebody who's trying to sell $1 billion construction project. And whilst they are both sales, right, they're not really the same thing. It's a bit, you can't lift your second-hand car dealer off his forecourt and stick him in a boardroom and expect him to have a clue about what to do to win $1 billion construction project. But I think the problem is most people's view of selling is the second-hand car dealer, because they've all bought a second-hand car, and so they think selling is that. And the other problem I think we have, and certainly I encounter quite a lot when I'm coaching teams, is often the people I'm coaching are all experts in their thing. Like, it doesn't matter what their thing is. It could be, like yesterday I was dealing with some people who were in private equity and investment consultants, in the largest asset manager in the world. They're very, very good at what they do. And the thing about expertise is that when you're very, very good at one thing, you have an assumption that you're clever and smarter than everybody else because you know more about this one thing. And therefore, your thing is really clever and really smart. And what everybody else does is a bit kind of easy. And lots of people who are in that kind of world believe that the selling bit is, well, that's pretty trivial, isn't it? You just pitch up, tell people what we do, and they'll buy it off us. And that's not really selling, right? That's pitching up and telling people what you do and hoping they buy. And hope's not really a strategy. And I think they miss the fact that I've spent, I start my first sales job. First paid sales job, because my dad ran a small business, and I was picking up the phone and dealing with customers from the age of 11, and pitching them on how much they needed to spend to fix their TV, because that was my dad's business. But my first paid job was 16, and I did a telesales job, actually selling coffee to businesses, and my job was to book appointments for a sales rep to go in, and I got paid per appointment, and then I got a bonus if the sales rep closed the deal. And so I worked out that I could earn a lot of money if I found out who the best sales rep was. And she was a lady called Anne, who was working in Nottingham. I live in Liverpool. And so I convinced the CEO that I was going to go to Nottingham University. So I said, I should book the appointments there because I need to know the land. And so he gave me that patch, which I didn't want because I was going. I wanted because I was going to make more money sending her in. And then my pitch was, I've got beautiful little ladies like to buy a cup of coffee, are you interested? And all the guys would go, and then we would get in and I would book the appointments, and I got £10 for every appointment, and then I got 40 quid if she actually converted them, and she converted most of them. And so at 16 I was making 400 or 500 quid a week in commission, which is quite a lot of money for a 16, 17-year-old. So I had a bit of a kind of gift of the gab. And then I got kicked out the RAF. I was a pilot in the RAF, a trainee pilot, and I got kicked out on medical grounds. And I went to a friend and said, what we're going to do. And he said, well, what do you want to do? I said, I want to fly fast jets. He said, well, you'll have to build a business and sell it so you've got enough money to buy one. I thought, well, that's a good idea. How do we do that? And he said, well, you need to go on the sharp end. If you want to learn about business, get in the front of the boat and go sell. And when you understand how to sell, well, figuring out how to deliver stuff and how to, all the stuff that sits behind it is easier. You got to go out and sell. So I came out of university and took my first sales job, proper paid sales job. Turned down IT support with ICL, who offered me, we're talking 1990, I don't know, when did I graduate? 3, 2, 3, 4, like a long time ago. And I was offered £18,000 a year, which is a really good salary, to do Unix support for ICL. And I turned that down for £8,000 basic salary and OTE of 15. But they gave me a company GTI, and I was like, that's fine. And I, in the first year, earned 42 grand. And then, got to start my sales career. And I changed jobs every time I nailed, how do I sell this? How do I position this? I went and did something different. So I did, point sale, computer sales to start off with, for IBM, and then I left and went and sold presentation equipment, and then I set up a channel, and then I went to Asia and sold consultancy, and then I did, and as soon as I got to be top salesperson, I would leave. Like, I wasn't that interested by the money. I was interested in what could I learn. And then I started M62 in 97. And the goal for starting M62 originally was just, I need to do a startup, get it under my belt, and then kind of do the next one. And it was a 3-year plan. And then and we hit the numbers. We did exactly what we said we were going to do for the first 3 years. And I kind of started learning about running a small business and cash being way more important than sales, but it's another story. And then we got to the point of 3 years where the idea was to fold it now and go do something else. And by that time, we'd sort of morphed into, we were designing presentations for people, and they were ended up being presentations for salespeople. And then I kind of sit down and realize that these salespeople don't really know what they're doing. And so I ended up starting to coach people in how to put their pitch together, because they didn't know how to do it. And they're all doing the same thing now. Like there's no kind of formal training for salespeople, really. I mean, nobody sits down and says, here are the basics. And most of the training courses, and I'm kind of licensed to train them all, because it seemed to make sense to kind of understand what's out there. And lots of it's a bit kind of, here's what worked for me, right? And here's what I did. And nobody really actually goes to any of the science. And so about 20 years ago, we started to go, well, is there any science that can actually help us? And the first bit of science that we were interested in is, people don't make the decision based on anything you pitch them. They make their decision on what they remember of the pitch. And so how do we make pitches memorable? How do I get an audience to remember the reasons for buying off the team I'm coaching rather than somebody else? And so that's cognitive psychology. And so understanding how the brain pays attention to information, how it processes information, and how you can manipulate that to make it memorable, became the first kind of 10 years of research we did, to the point now that we have published research, and I've started my PhD on the back of it, that shows that if you tell me what 5 things you want the audience to remember, I can show you how to design the information flow for that presentation in a way that increases recall by 350%. Now, if you're a salesperson and your message is 3.5 times more likely to be remembered when they get in a room and try and decide, well, should we go with A or B or C or D? But I can only remember A's message. Well, A wins, right? Because we can remember the message. So that became, we found we're quite good at doubling people's win rates just by having the right message, because most people have the wrong message. Most people are doing what everyone else does. Let me tell you what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. Prospect doesn't care. Well, prospect cares about why you're doing it that way. How does it add value for me? What's in it for me? Like why? Why is much more important than how, what, where, and when. But they don't ask that. They say, come and tell us what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, when you're going to do it. And that doesn't sell. And so number one, we help them with the message. And then number two, we help them design the information flow so that that message is memorable. That's all cognitive psychology. And then the last 10 years, we've sort of drifted into actually business decisions are not all rational. People buy off people they like, and people buy for all sorts of other reasons. They don't justify it. So they don't go to their shareholders and say, we've decided to spend $500 million with IBM because we really like the team. They might actually, that's what they're doing, right? They've got to spend 5 years working with these people and kind of, these are the people I want to spend time with, and they're my mates. And that might be what's triggered the answer, but you're not going to go to your shareholders and say that. And so you go to your shareholders and go, oh no, it's simpler, faster, better. That's why we went with IBM. And so you have to have both. You have to have the solid message, but then, you have to work out how to influence people. And there's quite a lot of science around influencing people. In fact, the Bible is a book. In fact, I have it.
Huh? Wait. I think I have the same one.
Here is the Bible.
Reveal?
This is Robert Caldini. Looking you over it as well.
Yeah. Because we talked about it before, but I mean, it's an old book, right? It's not it's not new.
No, it's 40 years old. And interestingly, so in psychology, there's something called the replication crisis. And which is where there was a tendency for people who were doing psychological research to design the psychological research to prove what they already believed. It's actually called confirmation bias. I have a whole training course about it. Like, confirmation bias is in equal parts our biggest problem, but also sometimes our biggest asset. Right? And triggering it, working out whether what we've got to do is unpick it or reinforce it, is kind of a significant part of the sales process, if you understand what you're doing. But it happens to psychologists, right? So they would go, well, I think this is probably important. How do we design an experiment to prove it? And then, you know, that's not good science, is it? Good science should be the other way around. Good science should be, well, let's do an experiment, see what we get to, and then draw conclusions. And so quite a lot of behavioral psychology hasn't really stood up to being replicated kind of post that. Whereas most of Cialdini's stuff has been replicated one way or another. And he talks about levers of persuasion, and he has kind of 6, sometimes 7, depending on how you read it. And most of those are based on biases, cognitive biases that we know people have. Liking is kind of one. The other one that I think lots of people in sales know, but don't often understand the science behind it, is consistency bias. And consistency bias is, once we've made a decision, we pretty much make the same decision over and over again, right? So I put a lot of effort into deciding whether I'm going to drink tea or coffee in the morning. But once I have made the decision that I'm a tea drinker, in my case, a coffee drinker, like, I don't think about it anymore, do I? I just get up in the morning and make coffee. And once I've decided I don't have milk and coffee anymore, which I decided, you know, when I went to university and had an endless supply of fresh coffee, because the coffee business that I'd worked for when I left, the MD gave me 3 years worth of fresh coffee and a free coffee machine to say thank you for how much money I'd made him. So I haven't had an instant cup of coffee for 50 years. 50 years? No, not quite that old. 45 years, something like that. Anyway, I didn't have a fridge, and so I started drinking black coffee, and so it never occurs to me to put milk in coffee, like, because I've already made that decision. I've stuck to it. That's consistency bias, right? You made your decision, you stick to it, which also then gets reinforced by confirmation bias, right? Because I kind of look around for all the reasons why not having milk in coffee is a good idea, and I only see the things that reinforce my belief system, right? All of that we can boil down to, there's a piece of advice for salespeople, which is, you know, if you want somebody to spend, I don't know, whatever you're selling, 100 million with you, that's a big decision, right? Get them to buy $50,000 worth of stuff off you, which is an easy decision, and they've started saying yes, and then they'll say yes to the next one, and yes to the next one, and then before you know it, they're saying yes to the 100 million one, because they've got into the habit of saying yes, and their consistency bias kicks in. So one of the things that does is, you know, early on in the sales cycle, try and find out what your prospect can sign off without other signatures, right? And if you know that his sign off is 50,000, well, you're going to put a deal in front of him at $49,000, so he doesn't have to get permission to sign it off. And then he said yes, and now consistency bias will kick in, and now he becomes your coach and your advocate, right? And he really wants to do it with you because he's comfortable with you and he trusts you and he built a relationship with you, and he's already made that decision, and now he needs to convince himself it was the right decision, and so boom, boom, boom. And so all of that psychology, which is a kind of tiny little slither of what we actually apply when we're working with a team, that's the last 10 years worth of research. And so now we've sort of, you know, I've read everything, every piece of research that we could use from the psychology world to work out what should we do, how do we coach a team to put the team into a place where they win. And now we're at the point where actually we could do with doing some research. And so we're striking up a partnership with University of Lancashire, where we're going to start designing research programs to go out and say, okay, well, if you present something like this, or if you pitch it like this, you know, which which is more likely to get a sale? Like how do we influence people? And to run a series of experiments that will do it the other way around. So instead of going out and saying we think this, how do we prove it? We're going to let's do the research and then draw the conclusions and then test them. And so we're launching a program to do that, to try and put the science into it, because there's no, there's, like I said, there's lots of people who talk about it like they're experts, but actually they're not. Like they've sold a lot of stuff and it's worked for them. And the other thing is, that having spent 30 years coming in and helping people do that, it's very interesting. Founders, for example, successful entrepreneurs, founders, are usually successful because they're really good at selling themselves. And so they don't really understand that what they're doing is they're selling them. They're walking in, right, and they're blowing people away with their charisma and their understanding and their confidence, and people go, oh, this person can really help me. And so they buy the founder, right? And then the founder gets to the point where, well, somebody else needs to go out and sell this stuff. And they sit there going, it's easy. You just go out and tell them what we do, and they buy off us. Well, no, like they're not buying the thing, they're buying you. And when you're not there, they're not going to buy it. And they come back and go, well, I've got a sales team now, but they're not as good at selling it as me. Well, no, because they're selling it and you're selling you. And so I spend a lot of my time kind of having them go, well, okay, but take you out of it. Like, why do they need this thing? Well, I haven't thought about that. Like, how do we organize this so that somebody else can sell it? And then how do we teach those people to go and actually sell it when the founder's not in the room? So, the people who have sold a lot of stuff are generally not necessarily really good salespeople. They're charismatic and they're likable, and there's a little bit of research that was done. In fact, only really one person's ever done any real research into sales behavior and what sales behavior drives. The guy called Neil Rackman in the late 70s spent some time on the road with a bunch of salespeople in the States, and worked out that the highest performers were the ones that ask questions. And there's almost a direct correlation between the number of questions that a salesperson asks and the amount of business they write. And then he looked closely at the type of questions, and came up with a kind of a way of trying to teach it to people, which he called SPIN, which is 4 types of questions: situational questions, problem questions, impact questions, and then needs payoff questions. And as a formula for asking questions and guiding somebody through to saying yes, it's pretty good. But it is pretty good in my head because it's actually based on proper data. Like they put researchers out, and recorded how many questions and how often and what type of questions, and then matched it against who was the top performing, who wrote more business. There's very, very little, apart from the stuff we've done, there's very, very little other active research been done into selling, and so which is good for us because that's why we win 75% of the deals.
Why do you think that is? Is it people are? I don't know. It's just I love the fact that you're basing it on science and research and everything like that, because I think a lot of the times, so I speak to a lot of people, and then I observe a lot of people, and I think people aren't very aware of themselves, of what they do. When people do something naturally, they can't actually explain it to people how they do it. So the fact that you've got the research and you can break it down and just go, okay, look, this is not magic. It's like there's reasons behind it and how things work. I think that's amazing. And so I know this is probably a different world than you play in, but you often get a lot of people selling online now. And I don't know if that's like, because people say, oh, this is how you sell online. These are the ways that you should do it. And I know a lot of people have actually referenced this book quite a lot in the past, but I think there's a lot of younger people trying to say, oh yeah, well, I've made this sort of amount of money each week or month or something like that. And and then it's just a way to buy my course, so I'm going to tell you how to sell. And it doesn't seem anything based on research or anything like that. It's just, well, follow my formula. This is exactly the way it is. And that might seem okay in the short term, but that's, it's not a long lasting business. Okay. It seems like a trend thing, whereas what you're doing is based on sort of deep psychology, that what's worked over, decades than anything else. So, but you've said so much, my head's sort of spinning, that this confirmation bias, I just want to just pick on that. So years ago, I worked for one of the big banks, and they pitched for a client, a big hedge fund, and that hedge fund already had a service provider looking after their sort of admin and processing of deals, etc. And then they basically gave us like this sort of breadcrumb of a bit of business. And the idea was that the company I was working for would pitch that business. And we basically changed our whole model, the way that we work, the projects, all the investment. We spent a lot of money, we're talking millions, to bend over backwards and almost change the company and the way that we serviced our clients, just for this one client, with the promise that in the future they would give us the rest of our business. And it felt like this, once you've won that, then it will absolutely be, it'd be like, the heavens will rain with money, and it would have been the biggest investment. The reality is, I think we spent maybe a year and a half, and then there was an announcement in the paper that that company was going to stick with their provider, and we lost that business. And it felt like a little, almost like a trick, to sort of say, oh, we are going out and looking at other providers, just to increase our service. For the original company, just to sort of say, okay, yeah, we need to up our game. But I'm just thinking, when you said about, once someone's made a decision, you kind of stick with it, were they ever going to change? Like, once you've committed, how hard is it? Because so I'm sorry, there's a lot of talking, I'm trying to formulate it in my mind, but when you win new business, okay, that's fine, and then you've got them locked in. How hard is it to take business from another provider? Is that the same thing, or are they different? Does that make sense?
So they are different. I mean, the pitch is pretty much the same, and the process for getting to the pitch is the same. If you are incumbent, you have an advantage in that you have the relationships, and so you have multiple points of contact. And if you leverage those and use those right, it makes it hard for somebody else to come in and design a solution. But it's also a disadvantage, because if you've not been executing well, then that you might have to climb out of the hole you dug yourself into. So confirmation bias is quite interesting. So what most people do is they win the deal, right? And they won the deal. They came to us, and we helped them think about what the value proposition is, and what are you trying to achieve, and pitch it right. So you pitch it right, you win the deal, and then everybody gets involved in delivering it. And sometimes it's not even the same people. It's not the people who sold it, like the sales team have to do something else. And so now we've given the deal to somebody else to go build the thing, or kind of deliver the thing, and they get into the weeds of blocking and tackling and delivering and servicing. And in your hedge fund doing their admin, like, somebody's messing up, like somebody's missing a file, or somebody's missing, adding something up wrong, and there's problems and there's issues. And I spent a lot of time in the pension world with Mercer, and pension admin's a nightmare, isn't it? Like, 50,000 people who all got paid on time, and then the one person who doesn't get paid on time is in the bloody newspapers with it's all shit. And so what happens is, if you've got people who weren't involved in buying it, because the buying team have moved on, been promoted, moved off, done something else, right? The people who were selling it, they're not involved, because they've all cleared off. And now we've got two completely different sets of people, and nobody thought to sit them down and say, this is the value we're trying to get out of it. And so nobody's thinking about value. What they're thinking about is, how do I answer that? I've got these 400 emails from the client they need to respond to, and they're doing the deal. They're in the weeds doing the deal, and so the next time they actually think about, are we delivering value, or when it's out for bid.
Yeah.
And if you're not careful, you've then wasted 3 years or 4 years or 5 years or whatever it is of an opportunity to continually reinforce the value we've been delivering. And so, we kind of have a watching brief on all the deals that we've helped coach, where we come in every year and remind the team, well, you made this promise. You promised them it would be simpler, faster, better. That's your value proposition. How are you doing against it? And they often sit there and go, "Oh, I forgot we promised that." So, okay, but the client fucking hasn't, has he? So, like, how are you doing about it? Oh, no, how are you benchmarking it? How are you quantifying it? And then when you've got that, why don't you go and share that with the client? Why don't you just sit down and say to the client, like, this is what we agreed. We agreed simpler, faster, better. Here's how we're benchmarking how we're doing, and here's how we're doing. What do you think? And what you're doing psychologically is really important. You are activating consistency bias, right? Go, I'm going to sit there and made this decision, and I don't think about it. A year later, you come in and said, you made this decision. This is why you made the decision. Oh, yeah, I did. And here's how it's going. That was a good decision, wasn't it? And I walk away from that meeting with they're doing a good job. Well, now when you get to the renewal, like, you're 97% chance of winning the renewal because you activated that consistency bias in your favor. Whereas if you don't do any of that, then all they see are the couple of problems they've had and now the dissatisfaction. And then, particularly right now, you've got somebody else coming over their shoulder saying you need to cut the cost. And so the way to cut the cost is to run an RFP process. And so they may not intend to move. They may be very happy with where they are, but they want you to drop your fee. And the way they get you to drop your fee is put you in competitive dialogue with 3 others, and so that your fee comes down.
Yeah.
The problem with that is that it gives 3 others an opportunity to come in and upset the apple cart. And one of the things we're doing is, if we're on the other side, so if you're incumbent and I want to win it, and I know that you're incumbent, and I know there's no servicing issues, and I know that we only have a single point of contact and you have multiple contacts, then I know our chances of just responding to the RFP are pretty low because the incumbent has a halo effect. So now what we've got to do is be disruptive, and as generally, particularly in the I spend a lot of time right now in the with Mercer Investments from the neo-CIO world, and where we're pitching against kind of the big investment outsourcers, BlackRock and GSAM and all. I mean, they're all really competent and they can all do a really good job. I mean, how do you unseat them? How do you unseat Goldman Sachs? And you're not going to do it by going in and answering the same questions that they're answering in the same way, because our solution isn't going to look massively different from their solution. So it's not about the solution. And our experts pretty much as good as their experts. And so we're not going in and saying, well, our guys are brilliant, isn't going to help, right? So you've got to do something disruptive. And I think in those situations, the best piece of advice we give people is there's a guy called Bosworth had a sales methodology in the 90s, which originally was called solution selling. He's now called it customer-centric selling, which is basically the same thing. And what he observed is you shift the nature of the problem rather than shift the nature of the solution. And so the best way of explaining it is, let's say I'm looking for a round peg. So I go out and I want a 22 millimeter round peg. And I go out to 3 suppliers and say, have you got them? And can you deliver them? And how much are they? And what's delivery? And they all come back and go, like, it's 22 quid, 3 quid for delivery. Can have it there tomorrow. Right? How do I I've got 3 people offering the same thing. How do I choose? Right? And I'm probably going to choose on what's the cheapest, what's the fastest, it's a commodity. Then I go to number 4, and number 4's got a smart salesperson there and goes, that's interesting. What's the peg for? What? Okay, nobody's asking that question. Well, it's because I have an oak dining room table and one of the kids has smacked it with a hammer. I've got a hole. So I want to repair it. And so I'm going to drill a hole, 22 mil, and then put the plug in, sand it flat, fix my dining room table. And then the sales guy goes, well, that's a good idea. That'll work. The only problem with that is a round peg with nice oak grain. You'll see that repair. If you cut it square, not round, and lined up the edges with the grain, it would be completely invisible and it'd be a much better repair. Well, that's okay, but I don't know how to cut a square. Okay, so in order to cut a square, you need a special drill. It's called a reamer. And actually, I have a 22mm reamer bit and an oak peg that we could send it to you and be a bit more expensive, but a much better job. That sounds great. I'm going to buy that. And I'm not going to bother going to the other three who've only got round pegs and say, can you do this? And so that's solution selling in a nutshell. And the solution is ask questions, not about what do you need, which is what people do. Like I said, what are you looking for? What solution do you need? Tell me about that. No. Why do you need that? Yeah. What's the underlying problem? And as soon as you shape the understanding of the problem slightly, then you have a shared ownership. You have a shared vision of what the solution looks like, and you've locked out the competitors, because now the incumbent looks like a fool because the incumbent never told you about the square peg. And he's an idiot, isn't he? So you need to come to me. And so that's disruptive. So that's how you disrupt somebody who's potentially doing a really good job and got all the relationships. You come in and you find something they've missed in the problem set, not the solution set.
Can I ask you a question? Because I used to work in projects a lot of the time. So I used to be something called a business analyst. And we used to go and speak to the stakeholders. It was normally we were going to put a system in place. And oftentimes what was the biggest challenge was people already came with the solution. They said, look, this is what we need. And there was a lot of effort and energy, just sort of, can you explain what you need? And people really had a hard time moving away from that round peg idea. They already had said, right, okay, we're going to do this. And oftentimes it was a process that they wanted to automate. So you've got probably spreadsheets, and they've built it up over time, and they were really invested in, that was my work. That's how we've created. And it feels like there was a lot of ego in there. And so in my world, it seemed really hard to get people to think differently or think about it in a different way. And it felt sometimes like a conflict, and we weren't ever trying to do that. We were just trying to understand the problem and just get them a little bit away from being so close to the weeds, like you described earlier. And is that the case, or was our approach?
Yeah, so I think there's two things there, and there's two bits of science that can help us with it. The first one is, if they are invested, if they've developed a solution and they have effectively ownership over that solution, they have pride of ownership, and they're unlikely to change their mind about it, particularly if you do what most people do, which is make statements. Right? So the salesperson comes in and says, yes, but have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? This is better. This is, you could do this, you could do that. What you're going to get with statements is, I'm going to defend my position. And what we're trying to do is ask questions about the problem. So not, have you thought about this, which is kind of, yes, I have thought about that. Go away, my solution, this is what we're doing. But probe into the problem. Well, why are you doing it like that? And then they've switched away from telling you about the solution, and they're now talking about the problem. And the more you can talk about the problem, the more they can tell you about the problem, the more opportunities you've got to suggest changes to the solution that would better solve the problem. And as soon as you've got one change, then we're in the solution selling, we've got the higher ground. The other trick is, and we do this kind of all the time with teams, draw a picture of what you think the ideal solution is. Right? If I take that and I present that picture to the prospect and say, this is what we think the solution is. That's me showing them my solution, and they're trying to decide whether they want my solution or not. The trick is, and we do this through almost everything we do, that diagram you make that diagram incomplete, right? And so you make that diagram with two potential boxes on the left hand side. I don't really care where they are. Like I don't care whether you go for A or B. It doesn't matter, right? And I put it to the client, and then we go. So this is we've designed all this. We've got all this set up. We think this would work. What we're really not sure about is A or B. Like, do you want your reporting on demand, or do you want it kind of sequential? Which works better for you as the business? And then put the pen in their hand and say, show us in the diagram which one you would prefer. And they come up and start drawing on the diagram. Psychologically, it's now his diagram, not ours. So psychologically, it's now his solution, not ours. But because we got him to it, we have a shared vision of it. And so now it's our plan that we worked on together, and he's got private ownership of this one. And if you've managed to convince him that it's an improvement or an innovation on his solution, and he can take credit for it when he goes back to the boss and says, oh, no, like I've talked to Mercer and boom, we've got a better solution, we've won, haven't we? Like we've won. So it's all about asking questions about the problem and then trying to draw some input from the prospect onto the solution design that designs it. The other bit that I do with teams all the time is if we're at, if the client has come out and said, here's an RFP, answer this, right? So they've given us a letter of questions and we're responding, right? Our response ain't going to look any different from anybody else's. They all don't believe that, right? They all sit there and go, no, we're better than BlackRock. No, you're not. But that's not the point. You all believe you are, otherwise you'd work for BlackRock. So, but it's not true. Right? But we're very good at believing things that aren't true, and a whole set of biases around that as well. So what I now need to do is shake my team out of that and go, like, it's not about that. Like, you're not smarter than anybody else, right? So we have to do something different in order to get people to change their mind. So if we're responding to the same questions and they're given us an agenda, the presentation is the same, then, and there's 5 people, then ignore the incumbent benefit, right? If they've decided that they're definitely getting rid of the incumbent and they're out to 4 other people, you've got a 1 in 4 shot, right? And all the solutions look the same, all the solutions are similar, so it's down to the team, it's down to the price, it's down to all that kind of stuff. Unless one of you comes in and goes, yeah, round pegs, it's a square peg. This is a better solution for you. And now it's binary, isn't it? It's like, do I want a round peg or a square peg? So my chances have gone from 25% chances of winning to 50% chances of winning. It doesn't mean to say I'm going to win, because it's still a 50-50. But what the client is doing is trying to decide, well, do I want this solution or that solution? And if I want that solution, I've only got one supplier, so that's what we're doing. And if I've got this, well, I'm going to decide which of these other 3. So psychologically, we've increased our chances, we've doubled our chances of winning just by going in with something different. Now, if we've gone in with something different that we've managed to transfer kind of intellectual ownership to the prospect with, because they had the pen and they drew the diagram, we'll win. My favorite trick, like I never lost a deal, is to encourage, get whoever the decision maker is, get them into a workshop with the team. This works for IT, it works for finance, like construction, anything. It doesn't matter what it is. Get them to work on refining exactly what the solution is, whatever it is. Get them in a room, and then at some point, get that person up articulating what does good look like. And it can be a picture, it can be a diagram, or it could just be, where I was going to say the biggest deal I coached for Mercer was $617 million worth of revenue, and the first meeting we sat down with the key decision maker, and I asked the team to ask her to tell us what good look like. That you future pace this in 2 years' time, what does it all need to look like? And she told us exactly what she was hoping to get from this process. Wrote it all down, read it back to her to make sure we'd understood it, brought it back to us. We then crafted that into something that was mnemonic and memorable. In this case, it was better together, simpler, faster, better. Then we emailed that to her and said, this is our understanding of what you said. She came back and said, yes. Right. So now we're able to tell everybody this is her value proposition. This is what she told us. She told us better together, simpler, faster, better. That's what we're designing for, because that's what she said. What that did is all of the people who work for her that were doing the decision, that were doing the due diligence, and now have in their head, well, the boss, this is what the boss is looking for, and now they're judging whether or not we're going to deliver that. So they're not looking at the detail of the solution. They're looking about how we're going to do it simpler, how we're going to do it faster, how we're going to do it better, and agree with us that we are doing it, so walk away with the deal. And in that, sitting with the decision maker, getting the decision ahead of the process, getting the decision maker to articulate or draw what good looks like, and then finessing that so that they believe they're hearing their words. They weren't her words. She never said better together, simpler, faster, better. I said that, right? But I made her believe that they were her words, because we had 8 or 9 meetings with her afterwards, and we kept saying, so your phrase is this. Oh yeah, that's my phrase. Yeah. And by the time we got to the end of the process, she genuinely believed she gave us the words. She didn't remember that she didn't. Like, we twisted it. The same thing. Like I've coached $10 billion plus deals. We've won all 10. My favorite one was the construction of Singapore's national stadium, which is called Sports Hub, and we were. I was coaching Bouygues, a French construction company, and all the other bidders were all local. And our teams, like, we're in Singapore, our team's all white, like it's American, British, French, like there's no Asians on the team at all. Like, we're complete rank outsiders. And so, but the key decision maker is the Minister for Youth, Community and Sport. Now it's Sports Hub, and so everybody else is thinking, okay, this is his sport portfolio. So we put together a movie that talked about how Singapore Sports Hub could be good for youth, community and sport, which is all 3 of his things, and set it to Heather Small's proud. What have you done today to make you feel proud? Whole strapline for the bid was making the nation feel proud. That we're going to build you a stadium that will win Singapore gold medals at the next Olympics. Make the nation proud. Wow. We put it on a CD and put it in front of the decision maker. Never met the decision maker, but we got it on his desk. And so we watched the movie and then went to his staff and went, that's what I want. And so they engineered the process, and a year later we get appointed, and he then goes on camera to the press to say, we've decided to use this consortium. They're the best in the world because we want a stadium to be proud of. I went, they're my words. They're my words. They've come out of his mouth 18 months after I wrote them, and I never met him. And neither did any of the team I was coaching. But those words came out of his mouth. That's how you win deals.
That is so I wanted to ask you about this because so again, when I worked in these banks, we would get RFPs, and basically it was normally like a service that you were going to provide. And it was basically like you had to answer all of these questions. So I used to work on these different departments and that, so I looked after one. And he was like, well, can you handle this type of instrument? Can you do this and this? And he's like, yes, we do this daily, we do this weekly or whatever. But it all felt very soulless. There never seemed any engagement. It felt like you were filling out like a very, like an application form. And I was like, and so what I used to say, you'd often get, so you'd be like the person in the weeds doing the stuff, and you get it from the manager, say, look, can you just fill out this section about this process that you do? And it was like, but I'm giving generic answers. I'm just going, yes, we can do that. But you go, but I don't know what that looks like. I'm trying to answer something that's just, and he was like, I wouldn't buy from me if I put that, and it just seemed that I don't know if it's because of where I was in at that time, but I was like, well, who's the decision maker? Get this person in, get them to like do a tour and get to know them, ask them questions, and I don't know if that process actually happens, and I don't know if I was so far
But
removed from
that's, yeah, I mean, you're talking about what good salespeople should be doing. Like an unsolicited, this is a fairly outrageous statement, but nevertheless, good advice. Unsolicited RFPs should be filed in the bin. So if the first time I know somebody is looking for a new service is because the RFP's arrived on my desk and we've got to fill it in and get it back in 24 hours, you're not winning. Somebody else is, right? Because somebody else is sitting there having convinced him he needs a square peg, right? And now procurement have come in, and procurement departments are really interesting. And when you talk to them, like they're very reluctant to admit this, but they will admit it, particularly if they've had a few drinks. Like their job is cost containment, right? The procurement department come in, and if you're spending, 100 million on something, they want to know that that they're getting $120 million worth of effort. So whatever the service is, whatever the cost is, right? It could be 100,000, doesn't matter, right? They want to run a process to get that 100,000 down. So they need to have 3 people in, because you can't really run a process with 2, right? And you get 3 people in so that you have an average cost. And then when you strike the deal, you have a delta. And so the procurement people can go, well, you were spending 100,000, right? And now we've got it for 90. And so we run this process and we saved you 10. That's a return on investment for a procurement department. So we should have a procurement department, and we should run procurement for all of these and drive the cost down. And so we've set up this whole kind of business kind of unit inside big businesses who are only really interested in driving the price down. Now, in order to drive the price down, you have to compare apples with apples. And so what they're trying to do is to standardize the products and services that they're buying, so that you can't come in and go, but we've got a square peg, they've got a round peg. Well, that doesn't work for them, does it? Like, they want to commoditize it. So procurement departments are in the business of forcing you into a commodity, and salespeople are in the business of forcing you to not buy commodities, but to buy on value. And the business owner, the person who's got the business need, is sat in the middle, right? And they're doing well, we want the best service, right? But procurement said we've got to have the best price. And you end up having that bizarre kind of, conversation with them where they go, Nicci, we really want your team, but we've got to have the price that the other people gave us. And then you have to justify why you need to spend more money on us and just more value and all the rest of it. And if you come up with a good case and here's the return on investment, then maybe you can overturn it. But that's the basic problem, is that, these procurement people, their entire job is commoditize, drive the cost down, and then, show a return to the shareholders by the fact that we bought the same stuff for less. That's the game from the salesperson, is to recognize when we can influence that and when we can't. So if the RFPs come out and we've had no shaping of it and we can't meet the decision makers, we'll no bid it. And we call the process for doing that an elegant no bid. And that's because we don't just go back and go, thanks, but no, right, we're not bidding. We go back and say, thanks, doesn't meet our criteria, and so we're not going to bid. But as a, is a sorry, it costs us 100,000 to bid, and we just can't afford, we can't put the resources behind doing this for you. But what we could do is give you 20 or 30,000 pounds worth of services against something like, so we could run, if you're doing this just for price, we could just do a pricing exercise for you, in order to, have you establish the price. And then what happens is they give us the pricing exercise, and they've opened up the door and we're in talking to the decision maker, and before you know it, we've solution sold and we've got the deal. So I had an example with IBM probably 15, well, actually before IBM. It was HP before they were bought. It was like maybe 20 years ago, and it was Anglo-American miners, and they came out and said, here's the RFP, and I coached the team to go back and went, oh, we don't know who you are, we don't have a relationship, we've got no chance of winning this, so thanks, we're not going to bid. And really interesting, the client came back and said, you have to. It's like, I'm sorry, why do we have to bid? Like, how does that work? He said, well, we need you in the game. We have to have 3 people, so we have to have you bid. So I said to the team, well, then you have to make a condition of us bidding that we get access to the decision makers. And they were so desperate to run a process with 3 people that they said, oh, well, fine, you can meet the chief executive, meet the CIO, like come in and meet the team. And then I'm coaching the team. Well, when you go in, right, what you've got to do is change the problem. And if you change the problem, we're in. And so they went in, changed the problem, we win the deal. We win the deal. So that's an elegant no bid. But the other thing is, it's elegant because if it is a done deal, like if this is just a paper exercise because they're going to give the business to, whatever, one of the Indian pure plays, like whatever, like the deal's done, then they don't give you access. They just go, okay, thanks very much, like, and bye. Well, you haven't lost anything, because you were always going to lose the deal. Like, what you've gained is you've saved $100,000 worth of effort of getting everybody to fill out this stupid form that is only there to benchmark the competitor. So no bidding is a real skill, and most organizations don't do it. Most organizations bid everything, but what's in their head, and I mean, I think it's probably true of lots of people who are in the sales game. Like, if you only win 3 out of 10 deals, right, but you need to win 10 deals, well, then you need to have 30 conversations, and maybe there aren't 30 conversations out there, so you have 20 conversations with real opportunities, and then you have a load of 10 fictitious rubbish opportunities that you got no chance of winning, so that when you go to management, you can say, we won 1 in 3, we've got 30 opportunities, and management go, oh, okay, no problem, right? And so it becomes a numbers game because you're shit at selling. If you actually won 7 out of 10 and you need to win 10, you need 15, you don't need 30. And so when you're stretching yourself over 30, you're not doing a good job. Whereas if you're stretching yourself over 12 and you win 75%, then you can concentrate and do a better job. And so there's that constant, you see it, like if you're on LinkedIn, like LinkedIn is absolutely full of people who want to give you lead generation, right? When I could keep going back to them going, well, what do I need leads for? Like, I'm good at selling. Like, you only need leads if you're bad at selling. Like, if you can't sell your stuff, you need to talk to 100 people to find 1 person interested, and you need 10 people who are interested to find 1 person who's going to buy, right? Well, then your funnel needs you to have 1,000 people a month, and so you need leads. That's not because you need leads, it's because you're shit at selling, right? And it's an easy thing to automate, isn't it?
Yeah, so I'm just thinking of that because in order to get good at selling, would that volume thing be like a playground to practice your selling and understand where you're falling down, or are you focusing on the wrong area? Do you really need to just look at yourself internally and see what your product or service, or understanding how you talk the language? Is it where would you spend the time if you were brand new to it all? So
obviously, I'm going to tell you, I'm a coach. Like, you need coaching. I think training is where I teach you things. So, we've just talked about solution selling. So I can teach you what solution selling is. I can teach you that what you need to do is find the square peg, right? But you come out of the training course, right? And you go back to your desk, you've got 1,000 emails, and then you've got a load of people phoning up saying, can you do this, can you do that? And you're back into it, and you forget all about it. So training doesn't work, really. I'm sure it works ever, right? But in sales, you can't take your salespeople, put them on a sales course, and they come back and suddenly they're winning more business. Like, it's just, And even the salespeople will say, "Oh, well, we had a nice meal and it was a good day out of the office and it made me think." And a bit of that reflection time, like it's the Hawthorne effect. It's got, it's not fundamentally changed what they're doing and how they're doing it. So I think what you need is you need a coach. You need somebody who's going to sit there and have the conversation with you once a month, once a week, and go, "So what are you doing? And why are you doing it?" And and hold you to account for the things that make a difference. And the things that, and to get back to the way we kind of marketed this session, it's all about the questions you ask. And we don't do that. Like most salespeople think secondhand car salesmen, like selling is about the stories you tell people. Like I have clients come up to me and go, your presentation was, we need to tell better stories to win more deals. No, you don't. You need to ask better questions. And they don't know what questions to ask. And so that's the place to start. What questions should you ask? And there's a set of questions around the solution, right? Trying around the problem statement, right? So that I can shape that. Then there's a whole set of questions that nobody bothers asking about the process. Like who's making the decision? Who's the decision maker? And have they got the budget? What's the process? All that kind of stuff makes a massive difference. If you know who the decision maker is, you know who to get in front of. If you get in front of the decision maker and talk about the value the project's going to deliver at the end, you win the deal. 97% close rate. When we have sat with the decision maker. Well, for that you need to know who the decision maker is, and then you need to understand the psychology. Because if I say, "Colin, can you make this decision?" Particularly if you're a middle-aged straight man, you're going to sit there and go, "Yeah, of course I can make this decision." When in actual fact, it's above your pay grade, right? But in your head, it's fine. When I tell Claire, my boss, this is what we're going to do, Claire will do exactly what I tell her to do because she always does. Because you won't, so that's the way it's going to work. So yes, of course I make the decision. No, you don't. Claire does. Right? So I want to get past you to Claire. How do I do that? Well, ask questions from other people. Can Colin really make this decision? Or Colin's, but no, that Claire be all over that. Oh, right, okay. How do I get to Claire? I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff early in the sales cycle that can massively change the outcome at the end by going in and asking questions. But we don't, and we have a kind of, it's kind of built into society, isn't it? Like the natural thing is people ask questions. If you're asking questions because you're stupid, it's because you don't know the answers, right? And so we're reluctant as grown-ups to ask questions. With kids, ask 300 questions a day. Admittedly, most of it is, are we there yet? But they question everything, they quiz everything, right? And then well, I already know about that, so I don't want to look stupid. I don't want to, I'm going to sit in the back of the classroom. I don't want to put my hand up and say, "I don't understand, what you've just done." Like, so you just sit there and go, and you don't learn. And if you don't learn, you can't sell. And so go ask questions. Like that's your job as a salesperson, is to go in and not make statements. We're really good. We're the best in the industry. We're the largest. We're the fastest. We're the best. We're everywhere. Like, have I told you what we've got this IP? Have I told you we are doing amazing things with AI? Like amazing things with AI. We're at the cutting edge. Like, who gives it? Like, that's not selling, is it? Like, that's bragging. Like, it's like my favorite one is the reason people come to us is our people are the best. What utter crap. Like, what you just said is, look, my business only hires clever people. That's why they hired me. Oh my God, you idiot. Like, your people are not better than everybody else's people. And if you believe it, you're stupid or you're lying. Either way, I'm not buying off you. Go away. Like, you don't go in and say how great I am. You want to go in, like, it's a little bit like a date, right? If I'm sat at the bar and some guy comes up to me and goes, "Oh, have you seen my Ferrari outside? And and I've got this job and I've got that job and I do this and I do that, and oh yeah, I used to be a professional athlete." And I don't know whether I mentioned it, but I'm a bit of a wine connoisseur. I mean, he's not getting my phone number, is he? But the guy that comes up and sits down and goes, "Oh, you look like you just come back from holiday. Where have you been?" Okay, maybe he's going to get my phone number. Well, sales are the same. It's a date. Like, if you're going to pitch up and tell them how great you think you are, like, unless it's a really nice Ferrari, we're not going home.
Yeah, something when you just said that, it's I remember working in this company, and they were pitching for us to do a project for them, um, but they wanted to go with a named brand, like one of the big consultancy companies, and and I know these people and how they work. It was like an army of people, and I'm like, why are they making that decision? I didn't know if it was out of ego, if they wanted to sort of say to the outside world, well,
Were
yeah,
they
we've got these
were they,
consultancy firms.
were they publicly traded?
Yes.
It's about their share price.
Oh,
It's like
okay.
you need to go out to the market and say we've got this problem, but it's okay. We've got Barn coming in to fix it, and everyone goes, "Oh, okay, that's fine." And share price goes up. Like, and the
Oh,
fact that we're paying Barn 3 times and the shit like doesn't make any difference. It's got their logo behind it. It's like nobody's ever got fired for buying IBM. That's not true anymore, but it used to be true. And so, yeah, we've got this problem. It's okay. IBM are in fixing it for us. Share price goes up. So it's that's understanding, what the buying criteria is. What are they trying? There's 2 problems, isn't there? One problem is we've got this problem with our process, and it's, we're losing money. But actually, the real problem is we've got shareholders screaming because they're not getting their returns, and we need to do something there in the city. And so, if you understand that, then there's a way around that, isn't it? And I said, well, okay, so I understand you need Barnes logo, you need to make a statement out to the city, but we can actually solve the problem for you. So why don't we solve the problem, and you get Barn to come in and do a quality check at the end, and so Barn gets $50,000 for coming in and going, yep, and we get $250,000 for fixing the problem, and you've saved £500,000. Can I have your business? It's just understanding what the decision is, and you're only going to get there by asking questions. And so we want a name brand. The question should be, why?
yeah.
Why do you want that? What value do you get for having a recognized brand do this for you? And is it about the marketing? Is it about the positioning? Is it about the share price? What exactly is it? And then remember, the first answer they'll give you is, well, it's lower risk. Not really about low risk, is it? Because the biggest risk is it not working. So, it's not about risk. What else is it about? We have when we're teaching people to coach, and when we're bringing coaches, one of the things we go into big businesses and help them develop coaching skills for their sales team, which often is not salespeople, by the way, because often salespeople don't make very good coaches for exactly the reason you said earlier. Like, they're really good at it, but they don't know why, and they don't know how, and then they give up, they get bad advice. But when we're teaching people to coach, one of the things we do when we're coaching is we don't tell people what to do, right? So I don't go into a team and say, you need to go and do this to win the deal, because if I do, psychologically, I've given them a get out of jail card, right? It's like they can go and pitch, and if they lose, they can come back and say, well, Nicci told us to do that. She's the global expert, and she said we should do this, and so we did it and lost. So not our fault. And so the accountability transfers from the team to me, and that lets them off the hook, and then they're less likely to sell. So we don't do that. What we do is, okay, so that's interesting. I've seen that a similar sort of problem when I was doing IBM. I was doing this, and they did this. Do you think that would work for you? And they said, oh, yeah, I think it would. Accountability stays with them, right? They always do what I tell them to do, but I never tell them to do it. I never say, do this, ever. I always do do you think this might work? Well, why not? And I sell them the idea without them realizing and pitching the idea to them. Then they go and do it. They're accountable. They do a better job. They win the deal. And I get the win bonus. But I don't do it by telling people. So in order to teach people to do that, because that's really difficult, like, most people think coaching is coming in and saying, do this, do that. So I used to coach rugby, right? And all the parents on the touchline, they all think their job is to stand there and scream at the kid because they've dropped a pass. Move left, go open, oh, you idiot. Like, typical parent behavior, right? It's not coaching, it's not helpful. Like, they're in the game, like, the head's kind of, full of adrenaline, like they're not paying any attention to anything. And my job as the coach is to look for the behavior that I want and praise it in the moment. And so when little Johnny's put in a good tackle and the ball and the players moved on, my job is to come up behind Johnny and go, Johnny, mate, great tackle. Well done. Get back in the game. Let's have some more of that, sunshine. Well done. First one on clubhouse is on me. Pick yourselves up. Like, did a good job. Go back in, do another tackle. Got to play the game harder. It's exactly the same with salespeople. Like, you get senior management come in and go, no, your presentation's shit. You didn't mention this. You didn't mention that. Do this. Do that. Kind of just destroys people. My job isn't that. My job is to sit there and go, okay, so that was all right. This was fantastic. I love this. That was brilliant. Let's have some more of that. Yeah, think about doing this, see if that would make it better. And that's coaching, right? So in order to do that, we need to teach people how do you ask questions to pull it out. So we have a little mnemonic we give people, which is called TEDS Pie. TEDSPIE, TEDS Pie. Tell me, T, tell me about that. Tell me more about that. E, explain that to me. D, describe it for me. Okay, they're very open, kind of draw people out, have people kind of think about the wider situation. And then when I hear something that I'm really interested in and I want to narrow it down, let's go. So specifically, that's the S. Precisely, that's the P. In detail, exactly, Ted's Pie. Right. And having those in your head, remembering that your job as a coach is not to make statements, ask questions, helps you ask questions. It's the same trick for salespeople. Your job isn't to make statements about how great your business is. Your job is to ask questions. So have Ted's Pie in the back of your mind. Okay. So you're doing this. Tell me why you're doing that. Can I describe that for me? Tell me more about that. Explain to me about this. So what precisely does that mean? What impact would that? I mean, those are the questions you should be asking. Ted's Pie. Like as a coach, as a salesperson. And if you're asking those questions, you're going to learn like kids learn. And the more you learn, the more you're able to spot the square peg that's a better solution than the round peg, and the more you win.
Yeah. I'm blown away. I think I could talk to you all day long and just learn from you. I think I mean, I'm conscious of the time, so we'll just wrap up. But the beauty in what you do is about observing the psychology behind it. And so something occurred to me earlier when you were talking. We seem to always be in a rush to sell. Like there's this desperation side of, okay, you've got to do it quickly, everything, volume, everything. But talking to you, it's not. It's about not slow, but considered, measured, thought through, actually removing yourself from the detail and seeing what is actually at play. The same thing as you said about the RFP, which was unsolicited. Okay, what is it actually doing? And most people don't do that. They just go, oh, I've got an RFP. There's business. I'm just going to jump all over this. But you, by taking that, removing yourself away from it, going, oh, okay, I've got this. I'm going to spend a load of money, waste all the energy or the resources in the team just to answer a few questions that we're not going to win. Actually, just take it out and go over here and just go, okay, we can't do that, which I also think there's a psychological thing of when you say, no, I can't do it. I think there is this, it's like, it's like asking for a date. Oh, no, I can't have a date. It's the thing you want more sometimes. But that whole psychological observation, sort of intertwining all of those things, I've never seen sales. Again, I'm not in the sales world, but how well you think and integrate all of that. And I think if...
So just the bit you just said there, where you say no to somebody, makes them want it more. That's a strategy we call anti-selling. Anti-selling is probably my favorite invention. And anti-selling is where you sit with somebody and you say, I'm not sure I'm the right person to do this for you. Like, here's why you don't need me to do this for you. And what happens is they sit there and tell you all the reasons why you are the right person to do it for you. And so you switch the ownership, and instead of me pitching them, they pitch me. They said, no, we definitely need you. We go, no, but I'm stupidly expensive, and this deal is way too small, and like I really don't think we should do it. And they'll sit there and go, oh, well, we could anti-sign, like it's me saying no and them trying to convince me that that's a mistake. So,
Yeah, it's genius.
psychology.
Yeah. Like I say, I think I could listen to you all day long and talk to you. I'd love to do a round two at some point because there's so many questions. But and I know there's no need for you to do this. I know that you're busy. I know but I'm so grateful for you showing up for me, explaining this stuff. It makes me so much more interested in sales. Because I thought it was a world that it was like you say, the car salesperson sort of world. But now I'm more interested than ever just about that psychology and how it works, and asking questions and how that is. So, and I'm sure there's a lot of people watching this or watch it on the replay, and I hope that reframes it for those people. And there's so many concepts and wisdom, and obviously you're excellent at what you do. But I hope that helps people reframe some of those concepts and really rethink how those things fit together, and just the business as general. Because I could talk again all day long, but you talked about the sales and then almost like the back end. In my experience, I've worked with providers and these two don't talk, but it's, you need these connection, you need to go back and, you've spent all this time up front, all this energy, and then it's just like you just let that go and you go, no, just keep coming back and just, there's so many tips and tricks, and it's just not tips and tricks. It sounds.
I had a conversation with somebody probably 25 years ago. They were in, at the time, Bayer Diagnostics, which is the company was making machines that do blood tests in labs, right? And the head of development, who was developing new assays and developing new uses, sat down with me and said, Nicci, you help us kind of figure out the value proposition for why people buy this stuff. Like, yeah. He said, do you think maybe there's an opportunity for us to use the value proposition to help drive the research and development? And here's my coach response. I don't know. What do you think? And then, sure enough, he wrote a book about it. And now he's CEO of some big diagnostics company because he worked out that if you think about why people are going to buy stuff off you when you're developing it, people buy it off you. Like, it's not rocket science, really, is it? Like, if you connect the dots all the way through, I'm going to develop this, and this is why this person's going to buy it. Like, business works, doesn't it? But we don't do that, no, because the R&D sit in a little pot in, some weird lab in the middle of nowhere, kind of, developing stuff without thinking about why people would need it. Okay. That's, Ogilvy famously said, management should not be expected to accept an idea unless it's presented to them by a salesperson. And most people read that sentence as you have to sell ideas to management. But I don't think he meant that. I think what he meant was, if the salesperson can't figure out why this is important, it's not.
Okay.
And I just think that's a sound piece of advice for any business. Doesn't matter whether you're a one-person operator or whether you've got, 125,000 people like, Marshall McLennan. Like, if you don't know, if you haven't got somebody in the business who can tell you why what you're doing is important to somebody who's paying the bill, it's not important.
Yeah. I think that in its own statement, I think, having worked in so many companies, there's so much noise and so much stuff that we do that isn't important. I think not just from the selling point of view, but it's just we sort of grow fat and we take on all this stuff. Most of it could be trimmed away. It's it's legacy stuff, and very powerful, very powerful.
Right, well, happy to come back and do another one. As you can tell, being from Liverpool, I talk for England.
It was amazing. You're definitely on my list of coming back. And again, thank you for the time. Thank you for just explaining it in such a beautiful way. And like I say, I could listen to you all day long. And yeah, it was amazing that you gave me your time. I do really, really appreciate it. I know you're not looking for business, but if people want to find out more about you, where should they go? Should they go LinkedIn, or should they go to M62? Where's the best place?
Either. Yeah, you can get me on LinkedIn, or unless what you're interested in is my stand-up, in which case it's not on LinkedIn. You can Google corporate drag queen and come and see me at the Edinburgh Fringe.
Oh, yeah. So you're going, when is that? August next year you go?
August 27th, next one. I've done two. I did 2016, 2017. So I thought I'd wait and do 2027. I'm going to do a new show, which I'm in the middle of writing, called Translate, because I transitioned late and I want to tell dirty jokes. So translate. And then I'm going to translate the stupid things men say and explain them to the ladies.
Nice.
So if you Google corporate drag queen, that'll take you to my NicciTake.com will take you to everything, but corporate drag queen will take you to my social media posts, and you see all my comedy and my stand-up and well, all of the more interesting stuff.
Okay. So I repost this on LinkedIn, and I'll just copy and put all of those in the repost so people can easily find you as well. But yeah, amazing. Again, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate the conversation. Yeah, you've given me a lot to think about. So yeah, I really appreciate it.
All right, thanks for the time, Phil.
All right, thanks, Nicci. Take care. Bye.